The night sky above Redwood Hollow was quiet, covered with bright silver stars. The small countryside town slept peacefully, except for one man who stayed awake in a small wooden house at the edge of the forest. His name was Miles Carter, a young engineer who had chosen this lonely place to live after years of working in the noisy city. He loved peace, quiet air, and the soft sound of the wind moving through the tall trees outside his porch. It was almost midnight when Miles sat near his fireplace reading an old book. His coffee mug was half empty, and the sound of crickets echoed softly outside. Everything felt calm and still, until something strange happened. At first, he thought he heard the wind change direction. Then a dull thud echoed from his porch, followed by a soft, weak cry. Miles frowned and placed his book down. It didn't sound like an animal. It didn't sound like anything he had heard before. He waited for a few seconds, listening carefully. Another sound came, a faint, trembling voice almost impossible to understand. Curious and slightly nervous, Miles stood up and walked to the front door. The night air was cold when he opened it, and at first he saw nothing but darkness. The porch light flickered once before steadying. Then he froze. Someone, or something, was standing there. It was a woman, but not like any woman he had ever seen. Her skin had a soft blue glow under the porch light, smooth and faintly shining. Her eyes were large and pale green, full of exhaustion and fear. In her arms she held a small bundle wrapped in silver cloth that pulsed softly with light, almost like it was alive. For a few seconds Miles could only stare. His brain tried to explain what he saw. Maybe a trick of the light, maybe someone in strange makeup. But deep inside he knew this was real. The woman looked at him with pleading eyes. Her lips moved and she spoke in broken English, her voice quiet and weak. "Please, help, my child." Miles's heart skipped a beat. The voice wasn't threatening, it was desperate. She looked hungry, tired, and scared. Her steps were unsteady and her arms trembled as she tried to hold the small bundle tightly. "Wait, are you all right?" he asked softly, stepping closer. The woman shook her head slowly. "No, safe. They come," she whispered, her voice fading away. Before Miles could ask what she meant, her legs gave out. She fell forward, and he quickly caught her before she hit the wooden floor. Her body felt cold and light, almost weightless. The bundle in her arms shifted, and a small sound came from it, a soft whimper like a baby's cry, but with a strange echoing tone. Miles looked down and saw the baby, tiny, glowing slightly like its mother, its small hands reaching out weakly toward him. He didn't think twice. He carried them both inside and closed the door behind him. Inside, the warm glow from the fireplace painted the room in gentle light. Miles carefully laid the woman on the couch and placed the baby beside her. The silver cloth around the child was smooth and warm to the touch, and he noticed small shapes moving faintly under its fabric, maybe some kind of protective material. He ran to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, and brought it to her lips. She drank a little, then rested back, her breathing uneven but calmer. "Easy. You're safe here," Miles said softly. He wasn't sure if she understood, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. She tried to speak again, but her words were slow and broken. "Lyra," she said, touching her chest. Then she gestured weakly toward the baby. "Aaron," Miles nodded, repeating. "Lyra." "Aaron," he pointed at himself. "Miles." Her eyes blinked slowly in understanding. She looked down at her child, brushing a trembling hand across the baby's soft cheek. A tear slipped down her glowing skin, catching the light like glass. Miles felt something twist in his chest, a mix of sadness and awe. Whatever she wasn't dangerous. She was a mother, terrified and exhausted, just trying to save her baby. The baby made a small cooing sound, its glowing eyes blinking open. It looked at Miles curiously, and for a moment he forgot everything. Fear, confusion, even logic. The child's eyes were full of innocence, just like any human baby's. Miles got a clean towel and gently wiped Lyra's forehead. "You're freezing. You need rest," he said softly. She looked at him with weak gratitude and whispered something that sounded like safe, kind, before her eyes closed completely. She had fainted again, but her breathing was steady now. Miles sat on the edge of the couch for a long time, just watching them. The room was silent except for the soft crackle of the fire. He could see the faint light from their skin reflecting off the walls. It was unreal, yet it felt peaceful. For a moment he thought about calling someone, the police, a hospital, maybe a friend. But how could he explain this? Who would believe him? And what if people came and took them away? They didn't look like a threat. They looked like refugees from another world. Finally, he decided to wait until morning. He brought some warm milk from the kitchen and poured a little into a small spoon. The baby drank it slowly, tiny fingers holding his hand. "There you go, little one," Miles murmured, smiling softly. When morning sunlight finally touched the curtains, Miles was still awake, sitting beside them. Lyra stirred slowly, opening her eyes. She looked around the unfamiliar room, then at Miles, who sat on a chair with a tired but gentle smile. "You're safe here," he said quietly. Lyra blinked, confused but calmer. "You not afraid?" Miles shook his head. "I was at first, but now, I think you just need help." She watched him carefully, as if trying to understand what kind of creature would show kindness to a stranger, especially one like her. Her people had told stories of humans, creatures of chaos, war, and greed. Yet the man in front of her offered warmth and care without asking for anything in return. Slowly she nodded. "Thank you," he smiled. "Don't thank me yet. You both need food, water, and rest. We'll figure it out." Lyra tried to sit up, wincing in pain. Miles helped her gently, placing a pillow behind her back. "Easy," he said. "You've lost a lot of strength." She looked at the baby, who was sleeping peacefully. A soft glow surrounded the child like a small light protecting it. Lyra whispered something in her own language, her voice full of affection. Miles didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. He brought her a bowl of soup, and she ate slowly, unsure of the taste but grateful. Every now and then she looked up at him, her expression full of silent wonder. After a while she began to explain, using broken words and hand gestures. Her ship had crashed in the nearby forest after being chased by other beings, not from Earth. She had walked for hours through the cold night with her baby, searching for safety. Her energy had run out and she had found his light, the only light visible from far away. "You help." "No fear," she said softly. "Why?" Miles smiled gently. "Because you knocked on my door, and because you have a baby, any decent person would help." Her glowing eyes softened. "Humans, kind?" she asked slowly, as if testing the word. "Some of us are," he replied honestly. For a few seconds, silence filled the room. The sunlight warmed the wooden floor and the baby stirred, opening its tiny, glowing eyes again. Miles smiled at it, feeling an unfamiliar warmth in his heart. In that quiet moment, something small but important happened. Trust. Two different beings, two different worlds sat under one roof, sharing warmth, food, and safety. There was no fear, no anger, only a fragile beginning of understanding. Lyra leaned back and looked at him. "You a good man," she said softly. Miles laughed quietly. "I'm just trying to help." But deep down, he knew this was more than just helping. Something in his heart told him this meeting would change everything, not just for them, but maybe for the whole world. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, painting the sky with gold. Birds sang gently, unaware that in a small wooden house on the edge of a quiet town, the first bridge between two species had just been built, not through science or power, but through simple human kindness. The next few days in Redwood Hollow were calm but strange for Miles Carter. His quiet, peaceful life had completely changed since that night. The small wooden house that once held silence and books now carried soft sounds of a child, the hum of gentle laughter and the glow of something not from this world. Lyra and her baby, Aaron, stayed mostly in the guest room. Miles gave them blankets, clothes, and whatever food he could find. He didn't understand everything she said, but he was learning. Every day Lyra spoke a few more words of English, and every day Miles understood her a little better. In return, she was teaching him some of her own language. Soft, melodic words that sounded like wind over water. Sometimes when she spoke to her child, it felt like a lullaby made of stars. A fragile beginning. One morning, Miles came into the room carrying a bowl of oatmeal. Lyra was sitting by the window holding Aaron. Sunlight poured through the curtains, making her blue skin shine softly. The baby's eyes sparkled as it reached for the light, giggling in its own tiny alien way, a sound like gentle bells. Miles smiled. "You both look better today." Lyra nodded shyly. "You, kind man?" "Aaron's strong now. No cold." "That's good," Miles said, placing the bowl on the table. You should eat too. You're still weak. She hesitated before taking a spoonful. Human food. Warm. Not same, but good, he chuckled. Not same as your world, huh? Her eyes softened with sadness. My world? Far? No, go back. Miles felt a pang of sympathy. I'm sorry, he said gently. She looked at him curiously. Why sorry? You not do it. Because you lost your home, he explained. Anyone would feel sorry. Lyra studied his face for a moment, as if trying to understand the meaning of that emotion. In her world, pity and kindness were rare things. Strength was valued more than care. But here, this human's voice carried warmth even when he gained nothing from it. Learning trust as days turned into weeks, a quiet routine formed. Miles worked from home on his small projects while Lyra helped around the house. She learned quickly how to use the sink, how to fold clothes, how to light the fireplace. Every action she performed was slow, careful, and full of curiosity, as though Earth's simplest tools were new wonders to her. She was especially fascinated by the plants in the garden. One evening, Miles found her standing among the rows of flowers behind the house, her fingers glowing faintly as she touched a leaf. The leaf shimmered brighter as if it responded to her. What are you doing? He asked softly. She turned and smiled faintly. On my world, plants talk to us. Small voices. Here, quiet, but I can feel. Miles blinked. You can feel plants? She nodded. They live slow, but they see. He didn't understand completely, but he didn't need to. He simply smiled. Well, you're welcome to help me keep them alive. I usually forget to water them. Lyra's soft laughter filled the air. It was the first time he had heard her laugh. It wasn't loud or sharp. It was light, musical, and made something warm move in his heart. Strangers in the woods. Not everything was peaceful, though. Strange things began happening near the edge of the forest. Some nights, Miles saw flashes of blue light far away between the trees. Once, he heard a faint humming sound that didn't belong to any insect or machine he knew. When he told Lyra about it, her expression changed instantly. Her eyes widened and she pulled Aaron close to her chest. They come, she whispered. They search. Who? Miles asked, her voice trembled. Hunters. From Sky, they want us. Miles felt his heart drop. Here on Earth? She nodded slowly. They follow Crash. They see light. They never stop until... Catch, he stood quietly thinking. He didn't know how far her enemies could reach or what they were capable of, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let them take her or her child. Then we'll hide you, he said firmly. You're safe here, I promise. Lyra looked at him as if she couldn't believe his words. You help again, and why? He smiled faintly. Because that's what humans should do. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered something in her own tongue, a soft word that sounded like Trilin, which, as she explained later, meant a light in the dark. A new understanding. Days passed quietly after that, though both of them stayed cautious. Miles avoided going into town too much, worried someone might notice something unusual at his home. Lyra stayed indoors, always keeping Aaron close. She often asked Miles questions about human life, about families, work, and Earth's customs. Humans. Fight much? She asked one evening while watching the news on television. Sometimes, Miles admitted, but not everyone. Most people just want peace, food, and family. She looked thoughtful, same as my people. But leaders forgot. Her voice held deep sadness. Miles could see she carried memories of a world that had lost its way. Maybe war, maybe greed, maybe something worse. But he didn't ask. She would tell him when she was ready. In return, Lyra shared small pieces of her own world. She told him about floating cities made of crystal, about rivers that glowed in the dark, about winds that sang when they passed through trees. Miles listened with wonder. It sounds beautiful, he said softly. She smiled faintly. It was, then her expression dimmed. Now gone. He didn't try to comfort her with empty words. Instead, he simply nodded and said, Then we'll make sure Aaron grows up safe. Here, where no one can take that from him. Her eyes shone with gratitude. She whispered, You care for one, not yours. You are rare, Miles. He chuckled softly. Maybe, but I think anyone with a heart would do the same. Bond of care Aaron grew stronger with each passing day. The baby could now sit up, laugh, and even reach for Miles whenever he entered the room. His small glowing hands often grabbed Miles's fingers tightly. Sometimes when Miles held him, The baby's skin shimmered brighter, filling the room with gentle light. Lyra often watched them together, smiling quietly. She had never expected kindness from another species. But watching Miles feed and comfort her child filled her with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. One night, after putting Aaron to sleep, she sat near the fireplace with Miles. The crackling fire painted their faces in gold and red light. Lyra looked thoughtful. On my world, we believed humans would destroy. That you take and not give, but you give much, Miles smiled faintly. Humans can destroy, yes, but we can also care. Maybe that's what makes us strange. She tilted her head, studying him. Strange is good, she said softly. He laughed quietly. I'll take that as a compliment. Then silence settled, a comfortable silence, like two old friends sharing peace after a long storm. Outside, the wind moved through the forest, whispering softly, a growing danger, but the peace didn't last long. One evening, while Miles was out collecting firewood, he saw it, a flicker of blue light again, closer this time. It wasn't lightning. It moved, scanning the ground like a searching beam. He crouched low behind a tree and watched. The air around the light hummed faintly, and for a brief second he saw a shape, metallic, floating above the forest floor. His heart raced. They had found something. He rushed back home quietly, making sure no one followed him. When he stepped inside, Lyra looked up instantly. She knew from his face that something was wrong. They're close, he said in a low voice. Her expression hardened. She held Aaron tightly, her eyes shining with fear and determination. Then we must go. Go where? Miles asked. You'll freeze out there, and if they're searching, the forest isn't safe. Lyra shook her head. Not safe. They hurt who help. Miles stepped closer and spoke firmly. I'm not leaving you. She stared at him, stunned by the certainty in his voice. No one had ever spoken to her that way before, not even her own people. He looked at the baby, sleeping peacefully in her arms, and said quietly, I'll protect you. Both of you. Whatever it takes, Lyra blinked back tears. Human heart. Strong, she whispered. Miles smiled softly. Sometimes stubborn, too. They spent the rest of the night preparing, closing curtains, turning off lights, and making the small house as quiet as possible. The air outside was tense, heavy with silence. For the first time, Lyra didn't feel like a stranger on this planet. She felt something deeper, the strange, powerful safety that came from trust. As she held Aaron close and looked toward Miles, sitting near the door with a flashlight and calm determination, she realized something she would remember forever. Not all heroes wore armor or carried weapons. Some simply opened their doors. The calm of Redwood Hollow had slowly begun to fade. The peace that once surrounded Miles. Carter's wooden home now carried a quiet tension. They sensed that something unseen was moving. Closer each night. It had been almost a month since Lyra and Aaron had arrived at his doorstep. In that short time, Miles's life had changed completely. He had found a strange new purpose, not just to survive, but to protect. Every day, Lyra looked stronger. Her skin glowed brighter, her voice steadier. Aaron was learning to crawl, his laughter filling the small house like soft music. But behind her gentle smile, Miles could see fear. A fear that grew each time the forest lights returned. Signs of danger. The nights had become quieter than usual. Even the crickets stopped singing whenever the faint blue lights moved between the trees. Miles began to notice patterns. Small burns on the grass near the forest's edge, and once, he found a piece of strange metal buried in the dirt. It was silver, smooth and warm to the touch, almost like it was alive. He showed it to Lyra one evening. Her face turned pale blue with worry. This, not from Ship, she said softly. This from them. The hunters? Miles asked. She nodded slowly. They close now. They mark ground. They find path. Miles frowned. Can't we hide you somewhere safer? Maybe deeper in the woods or in town? Lyra shook her head. Town not safe. They sense us. They follow energy of Aaron. His light strong. They never stop until take him. He looked down at the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. Aaron's faint glow shimmered across her face, innocent and beautiful. Then we'll make sure they don't, Miles said firmly. Preparing for the unknown, over the next few days, Miles began to prepare. He didn't have weapons and he didn't want any. But he had tools, knowledge, and courage. He used his engineering skills to create small alarms around the property. metal cans tied to strings, motion lights, and even sound traps made from old radios. Lyra helped him by using her own strange energy. She showed him how her kind could move sound waves through air, bending them slightly to create confusion. Together they made small echo fields near the trees, invisible areas where noise bounced oddly, making it harder for anyone to move silently. At night, when they finished, they would sit together by the fire. Miles would bring tea and Lyra would hold Aaron close, watching the flames dance. "Why you do this?" she asked one evening, her voice quiet. "You risk much." "For us." Miles looked at the baby and smiled softly. "Because no one deserves to be hunted. You came to my door asking for help. That's all I needed to know." Lyra blinked slowly, touched by his words. "On my world, help not given, only traded." "You are different," he chuckled lightly. "Maybe humans aren't so bad after all," she smiled gently. "Maybe not." The silent night 3 nights later, the hunters came. It began quietly. The air grew heavy and the night wind stopped. Miles woke from sleep and felt something, a vibration in the floor, faint but steady. He looked at the clock. It was 2:13 a.m. He moved to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to peek outside. The forest glowed faintly, not from moonlight but from 3 moving blue lights drifting between the trees. They weren't fireflies. They were cold, precise, and silent. He felt his heartbeat quicken. "Lyra," he whispered. Within seconds she was awake, her eyes glowing softly in the dark. She sensed it too. "They hear," she breathed. Miles looked at her. "Take Aaron, hide in the cellar, now." "What about you?" she asked quickly. "I'll slow them down." She shook her head. "They strong." "You can't." "I can try," he interrupted firmly. "Go." For a moment she hesitated, her eyes full of worry. Then she nodded and hurried toward the back of the house, clutching her baby close. Miles grabbed his flashlight and a metal rod, the only thing he could use as a weapon if needed. He stepped quietly outside, the cold air stinging his skin. The forest stood still. The blue lights moved slowly, scanning the ground, approaching his house step by step. A stand of courage, Miles crouched behind the porch railing, heart pounding. His traps were set. As soon as the lights crossed the first line, the radio sound traps activated, creating a loud burst of static noise. The lights froze, flickering slightly, and for the first time, Miles saw their shapes clearly. 3 tall figures, thin and metallic, with glowing lines running across their armor. They looked alive and mechanical at the same time. They turned their heads slowly. "Scanning the house," Miles whispered under his breath. "You're not taking them." He grabbed a metal pan and threw it hard into the woods. The loud clatter echoed through the night. The figures turned instantly, following the sound. That gave him a few seconds to move. He ran to the side of the house and triggered the second alarm, an old car battery connected to a floodlight. The bright flash filled the area, blinding the invaders briefly. Lyra, from inside the cellar, could hear the commotion. She closed her eyes, whispering soft words in her language, her hands glowing faintly. The air around the cellar shimmered, a small shield of light forming to hide her and Aaron. Outside, Miles watched as the figures regained balance. One of them raised its arm and a beam of blue light scanned the ground near him. The beam hit the old shed, cutting through it like paper. Miles ducked behind a rock, breathing fast. "Okay," he muttered. "That's not good." He picked up another piece of metal and hit it against the fence, creating a loud echo. The figures turned again, confused by the sound bouncing from the echo fields Lyra had created. They moved slowly, searching for the source. Miles took the chance to move toward the barn. Inside, he found one of his old machines, a generator he had used for his workshop. He quickly reconnected the wires and flipped the switch. The lights blinked on, creating a loud humming sound. The figures turned instantly toward the barn, focusing on the noise. Miles grinned. "Come on, follow me." The nearest figure moved toward him, its steps light and silent. Miles grabbed a can of fuel and poured it over the old hay pile near the door. Then he pulled a small lighter from his pocket. "I really hope this works," he whispered. He flicked the lighter and tossed it. The hay caught fire immediately, flames rising quickly. The blue light reflected off the smoke, creating a strange, glowing haze. The figures stepped back, confused by the sudden heat and brightness. Miles used that moment to run back toward the house. His lungs burned, his heart racing. He reached the cellar door, opened it quietly, and slipped inside. Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. You alive, she whispered. Barely, he said, panting. But we're not safe yet. The choice outside, the lights began to fade. The hunters were retreating, but Miles knew they weren't gone. They would return. Lyra looked down at Aaron, who was sleeping peacefully in her arms. Her eyes filled with tears. They will come again. They never stop. Maybe. We must leave. Miles stared at her. You mean leave Earth? She nodded slowly. Maybe ships still can fly. Small piece left. I can call. He hesitated. If you call, won't they trace it? Maybe, but no choice. Aaron must live. Miles sat quietly for a moment, thinking. Then he took her hand gently. Then I'll help you fix it. She looked at him, surprised. You come with? He shook his head. No, this is your journey. But I'll help you reach the sky again. Tears glowed softly on her cheeks. Mild, human heart bright like sun. He smiled sadly. Just doing what's right. Hope in the dawn. For the next 2 days they worked together. Miles carried tools and wires into the forest, where Lyra's crashed ship still lay hidden under moss and broken trees. It was smaller than he expected, more like a silver pod, cracked and half buried in dirt. Lyra used her energy to repair the inner circuits, while Miles fixed the structure with his mechanical knowledge. They worked in silence side by side under the cool morning sky. When the ship finally hummed to life again, Lyra turned to him. It can fly now. Not far, but enough. Safe place above. Miles nodded slowly. He didn't want to say goodbye, but he knew it was right. That night, the sky above Redwood Hollow was clear. Lyra stood by the ship, holding Aaron close. Miles stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, the cool wind brushing his hair. You gave us home, she said softly. You gave us life. I never forget, he smiled faintly. You just make sure your little one grows up kind. That's how you can thank me. She nodded, her eyes shining. He will. Because he know humans are good. A gentle hum filled the air as the ship's light grew brighter. The ground trembled softly. Miles stepped back, shielding his eyes as the pod lifted off the ground, rising slowly into the night sky. Its silver glow faded into the stars until it disappeared completely. The forest was silent again. Miles stood there for a long time, staring at the sky. A faint blue shimmer remained for a moment like a final goodbye. He smiled quietly. They made it, he whispered. And though he was alone again, he didn't feel lonely. Somewhere beyond the stars, a mother and child were safe, because a simple human heart had chosen kindness over fear. The skies over Redwood Hollow were quiet once again. Miles Carter stood on the porch of his small wooden house, sipping tea, listening to the soft rustling of the wind through the trees. Weeks had passed since Lyra and Aaron had lifted off into the night sky, heading toward safety. He had watched them disappear among the stars, leaving a faint, lingering glow behind, a reminder of their presence. The house felt different now. The rooms were quieter, and though Miles had returned to his simple routine, he noticed something had changed inside him. The world felt wider, filled with possibility, a sense of hope he had not known before. He had learned something simple yet profound. Even small acts of kindness could reach across worlds. A message from the stars one late afternoon, while checking his mailbox, Miles found something unusual. A small device lay inside, unlike anything he had ever seen. Its surface was smooth, silver, and warm to the touch, pulsing faintly with light. There was no letter, no instruction, only the glow. He held it in his hands, examining it. Then a holographic image flickered to life above the device. A soft blue light shaped into Lyra's face, her features gentle and glowing. Miles, she said, her voice full of warmth. We are safe. Aaron is strong. We fly far to a place where hunters cannot follow. None forget your kindness. None forget humans. You gave life, not fear. That is rare. That is beautiful. Miles felt a lump in his throat. He had never heard words of gratitude so profound. I'm glad you're safe, he said quietly. But you didn't need to send this. Just knowing you made it is enough. Her image smiled faintly. Enough for heart, but not enough for knowledge. Others will see. Others will learn. You showed the truth of your species. One act can echo beyond your world. The image faded, leaving the device warm in his hands. Miles stared at it for a long moment. Beyond the technology, beyond the glowing light, he understood her meaning. Kindness, courage, and empathy were powerful. They could reach across stars, returning to normal, or almost in the following weeks. Life in Redwood Hollow slowly returned to its quiet rhythm. Miles repaired his workshop, mended the fences, and tended his garden. He often caught himself glancing at the sky, wondering about Lyra and Aaron, imagining them exploring distant worlds and thriving. But something had shifted in him. Miles noticed the neighbors, Mr. Henderson, the postman, and even the children in the nearby houses, seemed to matter more. He began helping them more often, sharing tools, lending a hand with repairs, and even teaching the local kids how to build small machines. He realized that kindness was contagious. By helping Lyra and Aaron, he had learned to open himself fully to the people around him. His heart, once closed by years of solitude, now had room for connection, friendship, and compassion. A sign from Aaron one evening. As Miles walked through the woods behind his house, he noticed a faint glow among the trees. At first he thought it was fireflies, but the glow pulsed rhythmically, a soft, gentle pattern. He approached carefully. The light shifted, forming into tiny symbols, shapes and lines like a small code. Instinctively he understood. It was Aaron. Somehow the child's small energy had traveled across the sky and was now signaling him from afar, a tiny reminder that he had made a difference. Miles knelt on the ground, smiling. "You're okay, little one," he whispered. "You're really okay." The glow pulsed once more like a heartbeat, then faded as night fully settled in. For the first time, Miles felt a profound sense of connection to something much larger than himself. He realized that a small act of courage and care could ripple across the universe, touching lives in ways he could not yet imagine. A new friendship months passed. Redwood Hollow experienced one of the warmest springs in recent memory. Miles had become known for his generosity and quiet bravery, helping neighbors, fixing machinery, and supporting the local community. People began to notice his patience, his calm in difficult situations, and the way he cared for everyone, even strangers. One morning, while repairing a fence near the edge of the forest, he heard the soft humming of wings. At first he thought it was a bird. Then a familiar silver light appeared above the trees. Lyra's ship hovered for a moment, shining brightly under the morning sun. Miles's heart leapt. The pod descended gently, and before he could react, a small ramp opened. Aaron crawled out, waving a tiny glowing hand. "Aaron!" Miles shouted joyfully, rushing forward. The baby laughed, its tiny voice echoing like soft bells. Lyra followed carefully, her face glowing with warmth and relief. "We could not resist visiting," she said softly. "To see home. To see you." Miles knelt down, letting Aaron crawl into his arms. "You're even brighter than last time," he said with a smile. Lyra smiled faintly. "Your world, simple, kind. Aaron remembers. He grows knowing good exists beyond stars." They spent the day together, sharing meals, laughter, and stories. Miles introduced Lyra to more neighbors who were amazed by her gentle, glowing presence. Slowly, the alien mother and child became part of the small community, not as strangers, but as friends. Lessons of courage. Over time, Miles noticed subtle changes in himself and those around him. People became more willing to help one another. They worked together to repair the old community hall, to plant new gardens, and to share food with neighbors in need. Lyra and Aaron, though not human, influenced the town without trying. Their presence reminded everyone of kindness, courage, and the beauty of selfless care. They did not demand attention or thanks. They simply existed, shining softly and inspiring others. Miles realized that what he had done, opening his door to the unknown, had created something far greater than protection for one mother and child. It had sparked a small wave of goodness that spread quietly, like sunlight across the morning sky. A farewell, and a promise eventually. Lyra and Aaron had to continue their journey. Their ship required travel to a distant, safe world where they could live free from the hunters. The day of their departure, Miles walked with them to the edge of the forest. "Thank you," Lyra said softly, her glowing eyes full of emotion. "For home, for safety, for courage. You change hearts, Miles Carter. You are human." "Like no other," he smiled. "Take care, Lyra. Take care, Aaron. Remember that kindness always travels with you." Aaron giggled and waved, his small hands glowing like tiny suns. The pod lifted smoothly, climbing higher into the sky. Miles watched it disappear among the clouds, leaving behind a gentle shimmer in the air. His heart was heavy but proud. As he turned back toward his home, he realized something simple yet profound. Courage and kindness were not limited by species, by world, or by distance. One small act, opening a door to a stranger, could change lives across the universe. A new perspective. Weeks later, Miles continued his work, his garden flourishing, and the house warm and bright. The memory of Lyra and Aaron remained vivid, a reminder of the extraordinary events that had transformed his life. He often walked at night, gazing at the stars, imagining them exploring distant worlds, safe and happy. He no longer felt alone. The universe felt alive, full of possibility, friendship, and hope. Neighbors noticed his calm and confidence, his quiet generosity. Some asked how he had learned such patience and courage. Miles smiled quietly, knowing the answer was simple. He had been given the chance to help those in need. That choice had opened his heart, and in doing so, he had grown beyond what he had ever imagined. A legacy of kindness years passed. Miles became a symbol of quiet courage in Redwood Hollow. Stories of the mysterious glowing visitors spread, inspiring others to help strangers, to offer food to the hungry, shelter to those in need, and safety to those who could not protect themselves. And somewhere beyond the stars, Lyra and Aaron thrived. Aaron grew tall and strong, his small glowing hands capable of bending energy in ways that amazed even his own people. He often told his mother about Earth, about the human who had opened his home and heart, teaching him that kindness could exist anywhere, even on a planet far from their own. Lyra smiled softly, watching her child grow, knowing that one small act of trust and bravery had created ripples that would continue to spread, across galaxies, across hearts, across time. And Miles Carter? He lived quietly, simply, humbly. But every night when he looked up at the stars, he knew that his humanity had made a difference. Not through power, not through conquest, not through weapons or fear, but through the simple, shining truth that kindness is the strongest force of all.